Hello and welcome to FanX. Hi everyone, thanks for coming along. We have for you today a very exciting panel where we're going to be talking about all things Marvel. My name is Anjuli. I am the marketing manager for Aconyte Books, which is a new imprint that are creating time fiction, world expanding fiction in some of your favorite board games and IPs, specifically Marvel today. We're just going to go around. I'm going to let everyone introduce themselves. Tristan, who are you?
I am Tristan Palmgren. I am the author of Domino Strays, among other books. I am currently based in Salem, Virginia, though I've been in many other places as well.
And Richard.
I'm Richard Lee Byers. I've written a lot of fantasy and horror, and my Marvel book for Aconyte is The Head of Mimir, which is a Marvel Legends of Asgard novel.
And Carrie?
My name is Carrie Harris. I'm actually from Salt Lake City, and I'm the author of the upcoming X-Men book, Liberty and Justice for All, which comes out on November 3rd.
Woo! And Lottie.
Hi everyone, my name is Lottie Llewelyn-Wells. I am one of the editors here at Aconyte. I'm from Nottingham in the UK, so it's currently 1 a.m. here. So I've been awake and I've stayed up just to come and chat to you guys. I'm super excited to be here.
Yay. Wonderful. Yes. Yeah, I also am in Nottingham, so the two of us are, as you may be able to tell from our accents, English. And it is 1 a.m. here, and we have had a lot of caffeine to make sure that we stay up to give you this panel.
Thank you very much for sacrificing your physical and chemical health for us.
Absolutely.
Well, when we get slightly delirious in about half an hour, then you'll know it's because of the lack of sleep.
Yeah,
You'll fit right in.
Now, if you have any questions for Lottie or our authors, please do let us know. Pop them in the chat. We've got people moderating them, so they'll let me know when your questions come up, and I will ask them for you. Yeah, feel free to tell us your favorite characters and what you're excited for about these books. Talking of books, maybe we should start off by telling you a little bit about them. Let's go the other way around now, and we'll start with Carrie. Your book's coming out 3rd of November. Tell us a bit about it.
Well, my book is the first book in the Xavier's Institute series, and so these are young X-Men. Not necessarily characters that have been in the movies, but some new faces that you haven't seen before, but also some familiar faces serve as their mentors. So I've got Triage and Tempest, and they are out on a flight with the X-copter, and something goes wrong.
I love it when things go wrong.
Yeah. What happens? I need to know. If you also need to know, that's cool. You can buy it next week. We'll find out more about it. Don't worry. Richard, tell us a bit more about the Head of Mimir.
Okay, I wrote a book about Heimdall when he was a young warrior and not yet the famous sentinel of the Rainbow Bridge or anything like that. And it is a story of a very dark time in Asgard because they're fighting a war with Jotunheim that's not going well at all. And he and his sister Sif find themselves as sort of the pivotal figures in how that war is going to go.
Perfect. And Tristan, tell us about Domino Strays.
Well, Domino Strays came out this month, just a couple weeks ago. I have
Ooh, you were prepared.
Yeah. Yes, I brought show and tell. It is the first in what is currently the only announced book in the Marvel Heroines series, focusing on Domino, who is a mutant with luck-based powers, who you might be familiar with from Deadpool 2, among her many comic book appearances.
And Lottie, so you're quite unique here as the editor. You got to read all of these books when they were just tiny little seeds of ideas and turn them into these amazing novels. So tell us a little bit more about what you do and how you worked with these three authors, among our other ones as well.
Yeah, so I work with our authors all the way from the very beginning stage when they come to me with ideas, and we get them to pitch us projects. So these three lovely authors came and suggested ideas that they'd like to write and plots and characters. So then what we do is we then work them up into a pitch, which kind of gives us an outline of the story, and then into a synopsis, which is a really deep, detailed look at like kind of the characters and the plot, and most importantly, like how it's going to end and the narrative arc that we want to follow. And then we have a chat with Marvel and sort of make sure that they're on board with the stories that we want to tell. And once they're all happy with it, then our lovely writers go away into their magical writing caves, where I assume they can consume a lot of caffeine and don't try not to throw their laptops out of the window and curse my name. And then eventually they send me a book. And then I work with them, and I do what's called a developmental edit or a full edit. And we look at things like plot and character and narrative structure, and also like IP details and things like that. And it's my job to kind of work with the authors to help them make the book the best book that it can be. So, if there's a plot detail that's missing, or something isn't quite right, or we just need a little bit more detail on how these characters, what they're thinking, what they're feeling, or there's a little bit of a plot hole, then that's my job, is to kind of help them figure it all out, and help turn them into the wonderful books that you guys then get to read.
And I promise I didn't curse your name, I only hexed you.
Thank you so much. That's so generous of you.
You'll barely need to notice.
Yay!
I will say, Ali Cross in the chat really likes your headphones, Lottie.
Thank you.
As does everyone, because they're amazing.
They were a treat from me to me because I saw them and I couldn't resist.
Excellent. So, working with these guys, is it a little bit like cat wrangling, trying to get them? I love working with all of our authors. They're all, and especially these guys, are all absolutely fabulous at sending me what I need and when I need it, and getting it all back to me on time. Because it is a very laborious process. Because obviously, like, they spend a lot of time working on these books, and then I go and poke holes in them, and then Marvel might poke holes in them, and we do have to get things, tweaked and finalized, and they work super hard to sort of work on these books and to work with me to get them to the best book that they can be. And it's such a rewarding and fun process, and they all put up with everything that I ask of them to do. Anything to add to that, authors? Nice. You stayed on a good side, I see.
Well, I really liked working with Lottie, and I liked her comments. In general, I feel like when you're an author and you get editorial feedback, it kind of goes through 5 stages, which are like the Kubler-Ross stages of grief. And the first one is, outrage, and don't these people realize I'm a genius? And then you get more accepting and cooperative from then on. And the 5th stage is, given a little more time, I would have thought of all this stuff myself.
Excellent.
I cannot disagree with any of that.
Yeah, I'm just simply pointing out to you things that you will eventually have realized. But I mean, and I demand these books of you before you've thought of these things.
Excellent. So
Marvel is deadlines we could have focused on.
So I imagine that Marvel offers you just a huge universe in which you can play around in. How do you go about choosing the characters that you want in these novels? How do you pick from all of them that are available? Just, there's so many. How do you do it? I don't understand. I wouldn't be able to pick them. Anyone could jump in.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Tristan. You go.
I'll fight you to make you go.
Rock, paper, scissors.
When the opportunity came to start writing for the Marvel Heroines series, I had a slate of Aconyte presented us with a slate of characters we could choose from. It was quite expansive, so I went through all of them bit by bit, and I settled on Domino because the more I found out about Domino and the more I read about her, the more that I wanted to know about her. The more that I found out about her through the process of research, the more I just kept wanting to dive in, and the more so there really, after a while, there really wasn't much of a choice. My subconscious had settled on a character. I don't remember that there was ever a point where I consciously realized that I was going to be writing Domino. It was fate.
She chose you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
And I must say, like, I was gonna say, I've been really drawn to Domino since chatting with you so much about the book, like on and off screen. Like, she just sounds so cool that I also want to know more about this luck wrangling mercenary and what she gets up to.
I have just the book for you, but if you're also curious about the from the comic side, I recommend Gail Yes, that very one. I recommend Gail Simone's Domino and Hot Shots miniseries from 2018 to 2019. A lot of my book was based on what she started with those miniseries.
Perfect. Richard, I interrupted you. So.
That's all right. I wanted to display my book too.
Yeah, I've got that.
I can get it on camera here. How am I doing? All right. Okay. There. Well, as Tristan said, we get a list of suggested characters, and kind of my approach is I read down all the list of characters, and I think, oh boy, all these characters are really cool, but some of them suggest a story idea to me, and some of them don't, and some of them I think, oh, this is a great character, but I don't know what I would do with this character right now. So of the characters that where I do have an idea, then I will send all those ideas to Lottie. I think I've sent so many ideas to Lottie that she's probably sick to death of seeing them. But yeah, like I said, you pick a character that you like, which is not at all hard from this list, and then if you've got an idea that goes with that, then you send it in.
So yeah, if you hadn't seen, this is the Head of Mimir. Look at that! Look at that! Oh.
You have much better camera foo than I do. We show it much better than I should.
Belly flop into a dragon.
I will say our covers are delightful. They are beautiful, and you should definitely visit the Aconyte Books website, aconytes.com, because you can see all of our covers there, and they are all spectacular. No matter what IP you're looking at, we very lucky that we pick some beautiful artists to do our stuff, and I love them all. Don't make me choose which one I like best. I'm not gonna. I do know which one I like best, but I'm not telling anyone. I don't want anyone else to cry. Carrie, how about you? What was the experience like picking Tempest and Triage?
Well, actually, my experience was a little bit different because we had a list of characters to start from, but really my direction was to pick somebody who was lesser, who hadn't had their time in the spotlight. And so I am a deep comic nerd. And one of my favorite runs of X-Men is one that Brian Michael Bendis wrote. And there are two schools. The school has split. And things are very weird. And so I thought that would be a really, really interesting time to set a novel. And so I looked for some characters within that time period that had less physical powers, because I thought that would be really fun to explore in a novel, because you can do things and show things internally that you can't show at a comic or a movie or a TV show. So that's how I ended up with them.
Excellent. And Lottie, for you, so Marvel gives you a sort of a list that you just sort of hand out to the authors? How do you sort of like control that list and make sure that not everyone goes, we all want to write Domino, and if they do, how do you?
So we work with Marvel and we get a list of potential characters, and it can change, and it does change as things along in difference. And obviously we get our authors to approach us with characters, and we have had situations where people have pitched us the same character. It's not actually happened that much. We've been really lucky, but often we'll kind of look at which story we think works best, and often we're really lucky. Like as Richard said, people will send us in his case 2 or 3 ideas, or some people send 2, 3, 4 ideas, and then we can kind of say, well, we really like that idea for that character, but we really like that idea for this other character, and we do a lot with kind of like planning, like more publishing planning in terms of sort of have, what sort of books we're looking for, what sort of do reviews. It's a little bit more of a complex process, as well as looking for the absolute best stories, and the stories that we think are really going to fit with these characters and that we really want to tell. And sometimes you get a pitch, and for a lot of for these guys, when they submitted their pitches, often you'd be like, oh, that's a story I really want to tell. I really want to know how that ends. That sounds really cool. Sounds really interesting. And then it's about, okay, well, let's find out more details. I really want to find out how this story ends, or what happens in this story, because often we'll just get a three sentence pitch, so it's a lot of information to cram into 3 sentences, so that's when we go back and ask for more information. So but we're really lucky. We don't tend to have a lot of clashes, or at least not so far. We've been really lucky.
So a question that I have seen in the chat that I will bring up. So Ali asks, how did each of you handle being creative within the Marvel parameters?
Well, for me, I actually picked characters who hadn't had a lot of page time, because that gave me a lot of space to work. And although the school and that time period are very much fleshed out in the comics, the characters themselves are... they haven't had the spotlight on them. I keep saying that, but it works. So there's a lot of space to work. We never see Triage's family, so I got to create it, which was really fun.
I basically just second that. I with Heimdall, I feel like he's a pretty important figure, but I haven't seen nearly as much done with him in Marvel Comics. Not that I've read every Marvel comic ever published, but of what I have seen, he seemed much more to have much more that was unexplored. So I thought, well, I'll explore some of it. And as far as working within the Marvel universe, it's really not that hard if you love Marvel Comics to begin with. I tried to develop my book by taking all Marvel's lore about Asgard and then mixing it with stuff from real Norse mythology and real Viking culture to flesh that part of it out.
And one thing that helped was that we did have a little bit of leeway to play with the continuity. We're not based in the Marvel Comics universe. We're based in a neighboring universe. So while a lot of things are the same, and we drew a lot of things from specific comics, we could kind of bend things where it suited our stories to bend them.
Yeah, we like to say we've got like Aconyte, is it 618? I want to say that's what we're calling it. Excellent. I was like, it's either 616 or 618. Remember it, Anjuli? Yes, remembered it. Yeah. So yeah, it's sort of like our universe, which means that we can play with some of the canon without upsetting people, but still keeping some of the story the way that you'd expect it to be, which I like.
It's also helpful because we don't have access to comics that are coming out. So if our books and comics that are coming out contradict, we have that ready-built escape hatch. That's
true. So Ro asks, are there any plans for any book signings or readings in the semi-near future? I would say definitely something we want to do, but yeah, it's not gonna be anytime soon until it's safe to all be together again. We are like situated all over both the USA and the UK with all of our authors, but as soon as we can come to things like Gen Con, and as soon as they exist again, and San Diego Comic-Con and New York Comic-Con, we'll be bringing people along, and we'll be doing signings and readings and talks and things. That was this year's big plan, but sadly, a pandemic ruined it for us. I was all ready to go to my first ever Gen Con, and curses. So, next year, maybe probably 2022, if we're being like, looking at how things are going.
If you hold your books up to the monitor, we can sign them.
Right, there you go.
Yeah. Okay, another question. What is the biggest hurdle of being an author or an editor? So it's biggest hurdle, but also how do you overcome said hurdle? Let's keep this positive. Jump in, anyone, or I'll stop picking on you like in school. Richard, I'm picking on you. Biggest hurdle, how do you get over it?
Okay, I think the biggest hurdle is not getting discouraged, really, especially when you're first starting out. You just have to develop a kind of a thick skin about rejection, and if something gets rejected one place, if it's not something that is limited to one place, like something you wrote for a particular IP that's not yours, you get it out again immediately, and you're always try to be working on something new. So if an old thing gets rejected, it doesn't sting so much, because your greatest emotional investment is what you're working on now, and really just hang in there.
Tristan, nodded in your head sagely there.
The business side of publishing is a constant struggle, which is not to say that the creative side is a cakewalk, but the business side has been a little harder for me to figure out. I've been writing all of my life and only interfacing with the business side of publishing for about 4 years now.
And Carrie, anything more to add to hurdles?
Well, I absolutely agree with what they've said, but also I think self-doubt is a big thing. And my motto is I have permission to suck. I am allowed to suck. And you can't fix it until it's written. So, really putting yourself out there and taking a chance on a project, people might say no to you, and that's okay. You won't get all yeses, but it only takes one.
I think you're all very lucky that you've got lovely Lottie, who even when she says no, she does it with a smile on her face.
Well, I think we can take it as read that she's the most difficult part. We're talking about the second most.
Oh. I didn't say that. Notice it.
I will remember.
You didn't have to.
Tristan.
It's assumed.
Lottie will remember this.
I will remember this. Yeah, I see. I think as an editor, I have slightly different hurdles. Getting into editing is as becoming an editor in the first place is quite difficult, and I was very, very lucky. Because I worked with Mark Gascoigne, our publisher, at previous imprints, and I was very, very lucky to know him when he started up Aconyte. But I think in the job itself, like sometimes one of the hardest things about editing sometimes is taking that step back and in being critical and in like working out, okay, well, how do I convey what how do I convey what I think needs to be changed here? And editing is very, very much a partnership with the author, even though we're working with time fiction, and so we have to remember certain boundaries and IPs and certain guidelines that we have to play with. At the same time, it's a partnership. Like, I love these authors' books, and I really, really want to make them shine. And I think sometimes people see editors as like, we're terrible people and we hate your books and we want to, but at the end of the day, we just want you guys to be amazing, and we want people to love your books as much as we love them. And people were like, the Aconyte lot will know that I wax lyrical about books that I love, and they're like, oh, they're probably all sat on like the chats, like, oh my god, would you just be quiet? She's like, I actually want to go read this book. Whereas I'm just like, oh, and then this happens, and then this happens, and it's so cool. And everybody's like, oh, please be quiet.
Yep,
I'm just
I've
just ruin this entire book now.
Yep, I've had many books spoilt by you.
Yeah.
Even when we were in the office, it's like, oh, and then this happens, and then this happens. This bit's really cool, and then they say this, and you're like, ah.
And it's hard for me because I know what's going to happen like right from the beginning, because one of the big things for me is like I want to know how books end, because for me it's very much about character and narrative arc and emotional arc and stuff. So I'm always a big about like endings, and there's many books, as Anjuli said, that I've spoiled because I'm just like, oh, they're so good, and I just want to talk about them to everybody. And I can't, so I just talk about them to the Aconyte a lot. So
yeah. Oh, okay. Another question. How did you guys start being authors, and who got you started? I'm guessing, is that like influence from other authors? Like, who are your writing role model hero types?
I've been writing since about the fourth grade. But like I said, I've been writing all my life, but only in the past 4 years have I actually broken into the business side of the publishing world. Really, the thing that got me through was persistence, and finding just as many opportunities and different ways to submit my work as I could. My first novel was submitted through an open submissions period for a publisher that ordinarily only accepts agented submissions, and I was extremely very lucky to get in. I also, hopefully the quality of the book also had something to do with that. But from there, I've just been building connections and learning more about publishing and meeting wonderful authors and learning as much as I can from them.
And Carrie?
I started writing in high school. I actually had a really, really mean English teacher who gave me an F. And I have never gotten an F before or since. And I still hold it against her. But I wrote another paper for her, and she gave me an A+ and said, you should be a writer. And I went, okay. But I figured I would just write as a hobby, because people don't be writers. That's not a thing that really happens very often. And I went to college and I started writing for tabletop role-playing games. And that was my first paid job. I wrote for White Wolf's World of Darkness, which actually right now my laptop is sitting on a stack of those RPG books. So they're down here.
Nice.
But I wrote RPGs for a while. And after my kids were born, I told my husband, I really, really want to give this a shot. And we said, well, you can quit working and write a book. And if the kids go back to school full time, if they get old enough and they go to school full time and you haven't sold one, you'll go back to work. And I didn't go back to work.
Woo!
So I've been a writer ever since.
Amazing. I know. I love World of Darkness system. That's fun. So I'm very excited to meet you. That's where I nerd out. It's like, oh, RPGs. Tell me about the RPGs.
Oh, we'll talk.
Yes. I have a whole room dedicated just to RPGs. It's the best. Anyway, back to the subject, which was Marvel. Richard, have you got anything to add to this?
Well, I kind of had a sense that I wanted to be a writer of fantastic fiction ever since at a very early age. I started reading Edgar Rice Burroughs, and then I moved on to a lot of the writers from the pulps who wrote various kinds of fantastic adventures. All that stuff was being reprinted at the time. And when I got around finally to trying to be a writer myself, I wrote. I started doing horror first because I thought horror was big, little knowing that the big horror boom of that period was about to come to a horrific end. And but I sold a couple horror stories to small press magazines, and I sold a couple novels, and then like for the moment the horror market collapsed, and for everybody that wasn't named Stephen King, and I went on to other things. I including a bunch of tie-in stuff. I've done some World of Darkness novels.
Huh. Yay. Oh. And Lottie, you are also, as well as an editor, you are also an author as well. You write. I'm the only person in the Aconyte office who doesn't. Tell us a little bit about your writing experience and your heroes.
Oh, see, I do mostly sort of self-published and other genres and that, so it's a very, very different experience for me from traditionally published stuff. So it's a very, very different experience from what these guys have had.
But when did you know you wanted to be a writer and editor, obviously? But yeah.
Okay, so editing for me was a kind of a complete accident. I didn't think I was ever going to be an editor because editing was a job that you did in London. And London is a very expensive city to move to. I didn't really want to live in London. So I didn't think that I was ever going to become an editor. It was kind of like one of those careers that you look at and you're like, oh yeah, that would be really cool. But I don't know how you actually like become an editor. And so I actually was doing my master's degree in English literature and trying to figure out what I was going to do. I'd done a couple of very boring jobs, and an internship program came up with in Nottingham with Angry Robot Books, which Mark, our publisher, was involved with at the time. And I went to be their intern, and I was supposed to be there for 6 weeks. And I was there for 6 months because I just refused to leave. And I literally just was like, oh, it's the holidays. Can I just stay? Mark and Nick and that were like, yeah, why don't you just stay? So I got to learn a little bit about the ins and outs of publishing, like being an editorial assistant and stuff like that. And I got to read manuscripts and do background data stuff, and I actually read one of Tristan's books when they were going through Angry Robot. I remember reading that, and then I was very lucky. A job came up at Games Workshop's Black Library, which is also here in Nottingham. So I was there went and learned, did a bit of editing there, and then I went back to Angry Robot to be an editor, and then I came across the Aconyte, and so I kind of stumbled into editing, and I've been very lucky to do that, and it was a very fun sort of process. It's one of those kind of jobs, and everybody's like, oh, how do you get into editing? And I have to admit that I was very, very lucky, and I've had some amazing mentors all along the way. Mark has been fantastic, like editorial mentor, and we have long, in-depth discussions about, especially a couple of years ago, especially about editing and editorial philosophy, which I'm sure like a lot of people would find very, very boring, but we end up like having like chats about what we look for in books and what we love about certain things, and it's
I imagine really talk about that for hours.
But
I imagine he could talk about that for hours.
Yeah, Mark can talk about that for hours. But it's really cool because we get to have like long, in-depth and discussions about like narrative arc and reactions and emotional journeys and like plot structure and cool things like that, because we're really cool and we think these things are really cool. So it's and I was really, really lucky to sort of stumble into editing, and I absolutely love it. And one of my favorite things. And I love working with all of my amazing authors.
Yeah.
It's just for that I forgive the deadlines.
Exactly. You have to forgive me because I love you all very much. No, I have to admit, I'm very lucky. We work with an amazing group of authors here at Aconyte. I've been so lucky to work with some super talented authors. These three among some of the, among all of them, and we're just super lucky to have an amazing bunch of people to work with who create fabulous stories. And then I get to read them, and it's a cool job. Like people say to me, what do you do for your job? And I'm like, I get to read books. That's my job. I get to read books. So,
in like morning meetings, it's like, what's everyone doing? A lot. It's like, I'm reading books. We're like,
reading books. Yep. gonna go read a book. And that's like my favorite thing is I get to read books and I get to kind of dive into stories.
That's very cool. Okay, talking about stories, I want to know how you take a character from a comic strip into a prose novel. How do you take it from a drawing with very little dialogue, and sort of the action is all drawn, and then turn that into prose novels of action and character depth? And how do you do it? It's magic, and I don't understand it. Tell me your secrets.
Well, my answer for this is probably going to be specific to Domino, and that one of the things that really drew me to Domino was her voice and how she expressed herself in the comics. So when I figured out that I was going to be writing her, I knew from the start that I wanted to write a first-person novel and really give her a lot of space to use that voice and to talk about herself, talk about her friends, and describe her world as she sees it, because that was one of the things that really drew me to her in the comics. And that comics as a medium, while great, don't always give characters the kind of space to do that a prose novel can.
Yes.
So X-Men was actually my first comic love. It was the first comics that I read on a regular basis. And so the minute I heard that there was an X-Men line, I knew I wanted to write in it. But then the question was, what should the novel look like? And I just approached it as the novel I would want to read as an X-Men fan. What do I love about the X-Men, and put that into a book. So I really love the idea that, mutants are trying to find themselves in a world that doesn't necessarily accept them. And even though you have that serious stuff, there's also witty banter and, goofy moments. And then there's a lot of really cool fights. So I tried to put all of those things that I love the most about the comics and the cartoon and the movies into a book.
That sounds awesome. I'm rewatching the X-Men movies at the moment.
I love them.
Yeah, I was like, I'd forgotten how lovely I just enjoy them so much.
The cartoon is fabulous.
Ooh, okay.
Yes.
I will have to look that up. Is it on Disney Plus? Probably. I'll look it up. Okay. Richard, have you got anything to add for that?
Oh, I was just going to say that I think that this is kind of what Tristan said, that you find a character that people like, and you find an aspect to explore more fully that it hasn't really been seen, but it feels right. It feels like the character. And as far as the story and the writing style, you've got to be the kind of writer who can do kind of big, wild, and crazy action and describe it vividly, so that it compares favorably with what you'd find in a Marvel comic.
Okay, so we're coming almost to the end, but I do want to know, outside of Marvel, what fandoms do you like to hang out in, and would you like to write books in said fandoms, and what would you write?
Can I say all of them?
I knew you would say all of them.
I mean, I love superheroes, but then there's also I'd love to write some Lord of the Rings or Star Wars.
Oh, Star Wars.
I want to write Leia so bad. I'm a Carrie, and Carrie Fisher is my Patronus.
Yeah,
And
I love her.
I would love to write Leia.
Yeah. I'm a huge Star Wars fan, and yeah, I mean, I spent most of this year lockdown and watching the animated Clone Wars series, and then we just finished Star Wars Rebels, and now we just watched the first episode of season 2 of The Mandalorian. And I'm really sad that COVID stopped me from going to Disney World in Florida so I could make my own lightsaber. So yeah, I'm a big Star Wars fan, but also I'm a big fan of like a lot of like super nerdy fandoms. So like things like Supernatural, the Shadowhunters TV show, things like that. Yeah, so those are like some of my big fandoms.
I'm a big fan of Supernatural, so if somebody said you want to write a Supernatural novel, I would certainly do that. I like a lot of different things that are in the genre of fantastic. I probably wouldn't. There's probably more stuff that I would jump on than stuff that I would turn down. I think now that I think about it.
I think my dream project would be a series of Star Trek novels based on a new ship and a new crew, and maybe probably a time period we've never visited before that I could just go off with and go wild on.
I like it.
My introduction to writing was through fandom. I started off like a lot of writers by writing fan fiction.
Excellent. Well, we are almost at the end. So I'm going to go the opposite way around to what we did. Tell us a little bit who you are, where we can find you, and yeah, anything else that you sort of want to plug. This is your moment. Lottie, you're going first this time. Go.
Okay, so I'm going to plug Aconyte Books because, you can find me on Twitter, but I mostly just share Aconyte Book stuff. So you can find Aconyte Books online on Twitter, on Instagram, on YouTube, Facebook. We also, at the moment, have a free Halloween sampler with loads of really cool chapters from some of our other books that are more based on some of Fantasy Flight Games IPs, including chapters that we haven't actually shared with the world yet. So that is free. You can go and download that from the Aconyte Books website. And it's got about the opening chapters of about 6 different novels in it, some from Arkham Horror, some from Legend of the Five Rings, one from Descent as well. So that's what I'm going to plug. Go and download that. And obviously go and buy these guys' awesome Marvel novels and all of our other awesome Marvel novels that will be coming out in the future. They are amazing. And I know because I've read them all.
Just trying to find quickly the link for it to put into the private chat so it can be put in for me. I found it. Woo! I win. Carrie.
You can find me at carrieharrisbooks.com. And since I'm prepping for the release of Liberty and Justice for All, and I can't go anywhere because COVID, I'm doing my release online. So I'm actually giving away a Marvel loot crate, which I really want for myself, but I'm going to be generous. So definitely visit and enter that. All you have to do is tell me who your favorite X-Man is. And you can also find me on Twitter. I'm Carhar, the first 4 letters, my first and last name. And that's where I go when I am procrastinating and trying to figure out what to do about Lottie's notes.
And then I can poke you on Twitter anyway.
Yeah.
Excellent. Richard.
Well, you can find all my stuff on Amazon. I'm on Facebook and Twitter, and invite everybody to follow me there. I've got various short stories that are coming out here and there. I guess my next big project is that you'll see. The next book is another superhero book set in Green Ronin's Mutants and Masterminds universe called The Doom That Came to San Francisco, which is currently scheduled for April.
That sounds fun. And Tristan.
You can find me at my website, tristanpalmgren.com, or more often at Tristan Palmgren on Twitter. You can also find my other books there, although my first book is a little bit of a hard sell right now because it is a science fiction novel set during the Black Death, and not many people want to read about read about a virulent, lethal pandemic right now. So I won't plug that one too much, but I do love it very much. So please, if that's not check that out if that's not you can stomach it in 2020.
And finally, me. I have been Anjuli, Aconyte Marketing Manager. I also run all of Aconyte's social media feeds. So if you have a question about anything we've spoken about today, any of our books that you find on aconytebooks.com, send us a message on Twitter. I reply to everyone. We're trying to keep it very friendly and jolly, and do come along and tell us about the books if you're reading them, if you enjoyed the sampler. You can also find me on Twitter as Geek Girl Bookworm. I paint miniatures and I rant about things and say very feminist points of view about awesome stuff to do with miniatures and board games, and there's just super nerd stuff there. Come find me, come hang out. We cool. Right. But yeah, I think that's it. Woo! Now it's bedtime.
But aren't you extra awake now?
I am. I'm really awake. I'm just going to be lying there like, damn you.